reason or another, you can't always find an attorney to represent you in your case. But the good news is, if you still want to have an independent investigator look at your employment situation and help you see if something illegal took place, you're in luck if you live in Oregon. Oregon has an agency called the Bureau of Labor and Industries. The shorthand is we call it BOLI. And BOLI's job is to investigate complaints by employees to determine if they've been treated unlawfully at work. In other words, if their civil rights have been violated at work. The good news is you can make a complaint to BOLI for free without an attorney. In this quick video, I'm actually going to walk you through step by step how to file a claim with BOLI and make sure that somebody, some independent investigator, has an opportunity to look at your employment situation. Step number 1, the clock is ticking. BOLI is only allowed to investigate complaints about unlawful activity that took place in the year before the complaint was filed. So if this is something that took place a while ago and you're just now thinking about bringing a claim, you want to look back and make sure it's been under a year since the unfair activity took place. BOLI's only allowed to go back 1 year. Step number 2, request your personnel records. If you're a worker in Oregon, your employer is required to give you a certified copy of your personnel records within 45 days of your request. I find personnel records to be really helpful if an employee is looking into whether or not their termination was unlawful. The reason is because inside your personnel file, they may have started to document if you were late or any performance issues you had. They may not even have talked to you about these issues, but they might have stuck those in your personnel file. If you're going to have BOLI look at your employment situation, it's important to know, what's your employer going to say? Do they have documented proof that you were frequently late or that you had been written up for subordination multiple times? If they have documented evidence of these activities, those should be in your personnel records. It's really simple to request your personnel records. There's no magic words that you have to use. If you look on our website at hkm.com/Portland, we have a sample personnel records request letter that you could literally copy and paste and then just fill in the information. But again, there's no magic language. You can just say, "Dear boss, please send me my personnel records within 45 days. Sincerely, Jim." It's that simple. Step number 3, start gathering and organizing your evidence. I would start with everything and anything that's related to my employment. My application, my handbook, any write-ups. Of course, if you received a termination letter, you obviously want to include that. But think really broadly. Did you ever text with coworkers about what was going on at work? Did you ever send an email to a manager? Were you Facebook friends with a coworker, and did you pass a private message back and forth? Think really broadly and start to gather anything and everything that relates to your employment or that in any way shows circumstances that were taking place while you were at your employment. As you're gathering up all this evidence, I would designate a place where you're going to keep all of this information. A box, a file, a drawer. I would just find one place that all of this information is going to end up in. It's important because the reality is, as you start gathering, you might start having a lot of documents. And the worst thing would be if you know that you have one really good document that helps prove your case and you simply can't find it when you're supposed to be filing your complaint. So I would pick a drawer, a box, a file, someplace as the designated spot for all of this paperwork. Now, once you have all this information, you're going to want to organize it. The simplest way to organize it is just by date, putting the documents that happened first in the beginning and then moving forward to the most recent documents. Step number 4. Now that you have your evidence, you're ready to start filling out the BOLI intake questionnaire, which you can find on our website at hkm.com/Portland. The BOLI questionnaire is the place where they're going to gather all of your information. Now, this is really important. Filling out the questionnaire is not the same as filing a complaint. Remember, you have 1 year from the date of your termination or other unlawful treatment in which to file a complaint. Just filling out the questionnaire is not the same as filing a complaint. So leave yourself some wiggle room or some time in there. There is a questionnaire. Now, the questionnaire asks for you to write down in your own words instances of discrimination. What I recommend that people do first is actually write their story on a separate piece of paper first. Because you might start writing it and then you might want to back up and write it differently, and you don't want to have to keep crossing out or writing things differently on the BOLI questionnaire. So I would encourage you to write it on a separate piece of paper. If you want to handwrite it, that's fine. If you want to type it on the computer, that's fine. And then here's a quick tip. Write the words "Dear Mom" at the top, or "Dear Jim" if you have a close friend named Jim, or "Dear Sarah" if that's your girlfriend's name. I find that when I'm trying to get my story out, it helps if I just start telling it as if I would tell a close friend or a parent, somebody that I know really cares about me. So it kind of just releases the energy and allows me to write freely. So write your whole story out. Don't worry about grammar, don't worry about spelling. Just get it all out on some separate piece of paper so that you're not trying to write it formally at the same time that you're trying to get the information out. Step one, just get the information out. In my writing, I actually call this the ugly first draft. I don't worry about grammar, spelling, anything else. I just get the information from my head onto a piece of paper. So once you have your ugly first draft and you have everything out of your head onto a piece of paper, then you can go back and do some editing. Remove extraneous details. If you started telling a story or started telling a story about your boss that has nothing to do with the unlawful or unfair treatment, just remove that. But that's when you can go back and worry about grammar and spelling, etc. before you transfer that onto the BOLI questionnaire. Step number 5, fill out the intake questionnaire. So everything we've already talked about is happening before you've even put a single word down on the intake questionnaire. Now it's time to fill it out. There's one really important box, which is right before question 1, which asks you, what type of unlawful treatment do you believe that you suffered? And I encourage people to mark as many boxes as you think might be applicable. Because the truth is, later on, if you do have any of those claims, you can only bring the claims in the court of law that you've actually checked on that BOLI questionnaire. So you want to make sure to think broadly. And of course, if you are a woman and you think that maybe part of the reason that your boss treated you poorly was gender discrimination, but you're not sure, this is the place to just be safe and check that box. Step number 6, submitting supplemental sections of the questionnaire. For very specific reasons, which include disability, medical leave, crime victims, or veterans, there's actually a separate section of the questionnaire that you'll need to fill out. If your claims don't involve those issues, you don't need to fill out those supplemental sections. And finally, submit your questionnaire. Now, no matter where you are, even if you're all the way down in Klamath Falls or way out in Joseph, Oregon, you're going to submit your questionnaire to the Portland BOLI office. And the address is right here on the screen. Now, the important thing is you can do that by fax, by mailing it in, or if you are in Portland, just by walking into the office. Now, as we've talked about before, submitting the questionnaire is not filing the complaint for purposes of that 1-year deadline. What's going to happen after BOLI receives your questionnaire is one of the BOLI investigators will actually type up a formal complaint for you and send it to you in the mail. Once you've received that in the mail, it's your job to look over that complaint, make sure everything is accurate and everything reflects what you wrote on the questionnaire, and then approve it. And at that point, you actually file the complaint. That is the filing for the purposes of the 1-year statute of limitations. What's going to happen next? Well, BOLI's going to look over it, and within 10 days, they're going to notify your employer, whether it's your former employer or your current employer. If you're filing a BOLI complaint against your current employer, they're going to notify your employer that you've made a complaint. And that typically is going to happen within 10 days. At that point, a BOLI investigator is going to call you and call your employer to flesh out more of the facts and allow you to respond to each other. At some point, your employer will file what's called a response statement, and they're going to give their side of the facts, and the investigator will then call you both, sometimes multiple times, to try and continue to get those facts. Sometimes it takes several months, sometimes even over a year, for BOLI to get all of the information that it needs to actually issue a decision in your case. But remember, this is something that they're doing for you for free, and that you're able to do without an attorney. So while it can be frustrating to wait, you should obviously continue to look for new jobs if you're unemployed, or if you're still working for your employer, continue to perform well and do your job while the BOLI investigation process runs its course.